You can begin whenever.
Thank you, Justin. This is the meeting, the regular meeting, September meeting of the Audit Committee for the Cedar Rapids Community School District. My name is Maureen Ovid. I'm the chairperson. And with us today, I don't know exactly how we do this. We'll do this. If we were in regular session in person, we would go around and do an introduction. But if you don't mind, unless somebody's more brilliant about it than me, and we'll assume that, I'd just like to take this time to introduce our new members who are joining us today. And they are, and if you would just kind of wave when I read your name, that would be good. Jason Fisher. Okay. Janet Henry. And Chad Myers.
God is not here yet. So.
Not here yet. Okay, thank you. Just a bit of housekeeping. If I miss anybody, I got my big screen over here, which works better for me for seeing things, but if I miss you, Dave's supposed to yell at me. And if not, feel free to speak up. And then we'll begin. One of the things I want to talk about housekeeping-wise, too, is last year, as part of our feedback, we had heard from someone who said they would like to see a bit of education at each meeting, which I think is a fantastic idea, because for new people, you'll find out that educational finance is a different kind of animal than you've ever seen before. Maybe you have, good for you. But we're all still on the learning curve. And I would like to do that, and I plan to do that, Dave. I had already figured out things that I wanted to do, and then like the rest of this year, events took over. So I'm not doing that. I'm remembering it. We will get to it, and Dave has an orientation meeting coming up next month for new members or for anybody like me who likes to continue to learn this, because sometime I'm going to understand it all. All right, that said, I think, is Tom here with us today?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I am. Sorry.
I'm sorry. All right, and Tom Hoffman, Tom, how long did you serve on the committee?
Tom, you're muted.
I started in 2008 or 2009, so around 12 years.
And this is Tom's first year off the committee since then, but I asked him to come back because Tom has a lot of historic knowledge about the committee as well as expertise in insurance. If some of you haven't, I don't mean to ignore you, except I wanted to go to Tom and asked him if he would come to our meetings when we had insurance topics, because my background isn't in that, and I appreciate his expertise. Tom, thanks for coming to join us.
Glad to be here, and always will be a resource.
Thank you. That's public now.
Okay.
All right, then. Moving on to number 2 on our agenda, we have to review the meetings from minutes from our last meeting of June 10th, 2020. Any discussion? Could I have a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll move to accept.
Sarah, I'm presuming you're getting that. We had a motion?
The motion, that was you, Scott, right?
You can say Whitney and I'll second.
Okay.
Okay, Whitney, sorry. And second. Okay. We're going to do a little changing of our agenda today, and I hope I can do this right. We're going to move on to item 4, which is the risk evaluation exposure of the district insurance, a short topic here, at least I'm abbreviating it. And with us today is Cassie Daly. And Cassie, I'm going to turn over the floor to you.
And for the committee members, would you like me to share my screen as we go through that? Or do we want to just kind of go with, you have the documents in hand? Or how would you like me to do that?
I have my documents here, but I don't know about anybody else.
Would you like me to share, or would you like me to,
Why don't you go ahead and share since we are a virtual meeting, if you don't mind, Dave?
okay. Now, where'd it go? There we go. Can you see that?
Yep.
All right. I'm going to go down to this part. Whoa. Uh-oh.
Hey Dave, when you get to where you need to be, can you zoom in just a little bit on that article?
I will. It's really just flying on me. Cassie, is this what you want to just go through this document?
Great.
All right.
There's a couple of different times during this that I'll refer to some pages, but I have the page numbers, so I don't know if that's easier for you just to kind of click through that, but I'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you.
So, hello everyone, I'm Cassie Daly. I'm with the Excel Group, and we work with the district on your insurance and risk management. We were formerly Millhiser Smith. I don't know if any of you recognize that name from the community. In 2018, we actually merged with an agency out of Waverly Cedar Falls and became the Excel Group, and we're quickly growing ever since that day. We now have offices in Cedar Rapids, Waverly, Cedar Falls, Des Moines, Coralville, and also now a small agency in Moline. Our agency specializes really in everything insurance. We do business, personal, life, health, benefits, wealth management, and even some investment stuff now. So think of us for all your insurance needs. But more importantly, and for the discussion here today, we've been partnering with the Cedar Rapids School District now for well over 40 years. So we really value the relationship we have with the district. And we look forward every year to looking for different ways to help improve, grow, and expand on the insurance program we have with the district, whether that be from this year, Zoom meetings or trainings or different things, just looking for new and unique opportunities and to help the district grow that program and work with EMC and the various other carriers that we have the district with. So with all that being said, I just wanted to start today with a little bit of overview for all of you for the insurance world basically that we're living in right now. And this really was prior to the July renewal, the information that I'm going to give to you. And what Dave has up on the screen is what was presented to the Board of Education for the July 1, 2020 to 2021 insurance renewal. So even before this 8/10/2020 day, the derecho that will forever live in all of our brains here, property was a challenging market for the insurance world. We've continued to see stronger windstorms, hailstorms, wildfires, and other natural disasters, hurricanes, flooding, etc., really increased in frequency and severity. And so it has a lot of insurance companies reevaluating deductibles, their property insurance programs as a whole, and maybe even reevaluating, how much value they want in that book of business. So just insurance in general, we've really been looking at that property line this whole past year, even before this storm kicked in. Also, another big topic in the insurance world is social inflation. So think about being home before the Rachel storm hit and your internet was actually working and cable was working, all of that good stuff. think about all the civil action lawsuits and legal ads you'd see on TV. Those things are strongly impacting the insurance world as well. In fact, we just had, right before the storm, one of our insurance carriers did like a mock jury trial where they presented this group of people a trial case with different scenarios, and then they wanted to see how they would come to a settlement or what they would decide upon as a group for what this plaintiff and how the trial would play out. So what I thought was really unique watching that was, given the scenario, it was an individual who was impacted from like a large corporation, think like a Coca-Cola, that type of large corporation. And original request of settlement was $100,000. As the scenario played out and the jury members were talking back and forth, the $100,000 kept being brought up. But within a matter of a couple minutes, the number quickly changed from 100 to 500,000, and then finally settled at $1 million. And all of that was just in a matter of minutes. And basically, the jury said at the end, "Well, 100,000 didn't seem like much." And so we wanted to make sure that this company felt a true impact from this claim, and so they awarded $1 million. And of course, this was just a mock trial, but it's a true reflection of what is happening in our jury system right now. Let's see. In just a minute, I'm going to get into district-specific coverage, but I also wanted to take a minute to note on how EMC, who writes a lot of the district's insurance, how they're doing. So in 2019, EMC's combined ratio was 102.7. So an insurance company's goal is always to hit that 100% mark, or less, so that they can earn a profit. Even with that 102.7 from fiscal year 2019, they're still an A-rated company, so doing very well financially. One other layer that comes into play with the district's insurance is the part of EMC that the district is a part of is the Iowa Safety Group Insurance Program. So it's the IASB program, and it's through EMC, but also with part of the IASB. So when we talk about that particular program and the members of this program are also seeing significant increase in claim severity and frequency. So just to give you a little perspective there, prior to 2017, the 10-year average claim total for that program was $24 million. Since then, the frequency and severity has been increasing on nearly every line of coverage. So we've had tornadoes in Iowa, we've had wind and hail claims impacting property, we've had pretty severe abuse and molestation claims, also some auto claims. All of these play an impact into that program. So fiscal year 2017 actually saw the highest claim total at $42.8 million paid out just in the IASB safety program. That involved a pretty significant portion of property claims, but also some pretty severe abuse and molestation claims. You may have noted some of those in papers around the area. Fiscal year 2018 saw 36.5 million in claims. Fiscal year 19 then saw $41.8 million in claims. So back up to that, nearing that largest number again. Of that, we saw 2 pretty severe auto claims with buses and accidents that way. And then
Excuse me, Patsy.
Yeah.
When you said 2 significant bus accidents, just to clarify, are we talking about Cedar Rapids or another district?
Fiscal year 19 was Cedar Rapids, was
Okay, thank you.
that, but another one was outside of the district.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then fiscal year 2020 actually saw claims of 28.4. That was as of June 9th, like I said, just before the July 1 renewal. So that was a better year, but hey, then guess what? 2020 happened.
Cassie?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I had a little trouble getting unmuted here, sorry about that. This is Tom, and would you mind just taking us down the path of what the IASB program is? It's just not only as Maureen suggested, just Cedar Rapids Community Schools. It's a conglomeration of school districts around the state of Iowa, and how the buying co-op operates and why it's beneficial to the district to do that.
Yeah, I'm actually going to touch on that in just a minute, so if you don't mind, I'll get to that question, but thank you, I appreciate it. So based on the insurance marketplace, what I had to break the news to Dave and Sarah for was that EMC was expecting to see increases on nearly every line of either 10 to 20% going into fiscal year 2021 here. So I hate to deliver news like that, but it's important to be upfront and honest and look at options that we have going into that. So I'm going to jump now into more detail about what Tom has been asking about. So what was presented to the Board of Education is what Dave has up on the screen here. And while I would love to go through every line of this with you guys, we don't have nearly enough time in this meeting. But so page 7 through 21 actually of your agenda here goes through line by line the individual coverages. It breaks down limits, deductibles, retentions, specific coverage enhancements that we've added to those different lines. So maybe some of you have had a chance to go through this. If you have questions at the end, I'm happy to address. I am going to touch base on some significant ones I think this group would like to see talked about. So, but if I miss something, again, ask at the end here. Also, I have maybe what's easier to start with is like a 1,000-foot view report. Basically, it's just a one-page document of all the district's coverages smushed onto one page, very high level. So Dave, if you could jump to page 22, I think that is included in the report here. Super teeny tiny, so I apologize for that. Again, we're trying to smush it all onto one page here. I don't know if we could zoom in. Maybe what this report or just the one-page document is going to show is just the lines of coverage and who covers it. So you'll see like the property line, liability linebacker, and then on the side, EMC insurance company. So you can see those, and then annual premiums as of today, actually. So, and as you can see, and what I'm going to jump to now, Tom's question is a majority or a good handful of the lines of coverage are covered by EMC insurance companies, so Employers Mutual Casualty. They're actually a Des Moines-based agency, and they have a program with the Iowa Association of School Boards. So they've designed this program to create a top-notch program, really bar none. It's top-notch. I can't even get some of these coverages for a standard business that we would try to write for. It's designed specifically for school districts, college communities, community colleges, and I think there's like, forgive me if I'm wrong here, over 50 members of this. Does that sound right, Tom?
Sorry, I'm having trouble unmuting. Sorry about that. Give me the question again, please, Cassie.
Do you remember the numbers of that are involved in the ISB program with EMC?
Was it like 22 or 25?
Yeah, I'll look it up and I'll share with Dave if he could pass it out to the group again. I'll get you a list of who's involved in all of this. But yeah, it's a really extensive group of Iowa public schools and community colleges. There's also some AEAs that are also insured under this program as well. So some benefits of being in this program, and these are really just a few, but the premiums are quoted and issued and set for your fiscal year. So the premiums that you see won't change unless the district requests a change. So my property premium is what it is. There's no assessments after the year is over stating, okay, you had this many losses, now we're going to assess you this amount of dollar. It really is what it is. The only kickback or thing I would note here would be like a linebacker coverage where you have a deductible per claim. So there could be some fees associated with a deductible or a retention that way. I am going to get a little bit into the linebacker coverage here in a minute, so you can see what I mean by that. But otherwise, big point here is there's no assessment later based on claims you've had. Also, EMC caps the profit that they can make off this IASB program. So any other profits that come out of this are returned to members in a dividend. Unfortunately, last year was the first year that this program has been in existence that they haven't been able to pay a dividend out. So that was kind of heartbreaking news. Just claims were too high last year to pay anything back. So hopefully with fiscal year 2020 being lower claim year, we will see some dividends coming from this potentially next year. So also they offer an extensive amount of school education designed loss control services. So some of the services that the Cedar Rapids Community School District has taken advantage of just in this past year would be indoor air and mold investigations. So anytime there's a cause of alarm or concern, we simply can just reach out to EMC, and they have environmental engineers that will come out and do testing of indoor air quality, looking for mold spores, looking for anything that could potentially cause harm to staff, students that are in that building. And then they also offer up some remediation ideas and what this district can do to correct the problem. They do rehab the lab, where they'll send in a chemical analyst to go through the science labs and pick out potential chemicals that no longer should be used in the school setting, or maybe they're expired or something that way. And they do building walkthroughs every year, just looking at overall safety. So they look at things such as like floor friction, that kind of things. How can we prevent slips and falls? If we need to mark off certain areas, like painting, like if the sidewalk is unlevel, we need to make people aware of. They would note those types of things. They've also, and I've seen, helped evaluate like where dumpsters should be placed based on snow removal, and how we can help employees more efficiently do certain types of work. So truly is very beneficial. And then just the simple fact that EMC is an Iowa-based company, so your premium dollars are benefiting the Iowa economy. Let's see, going down the line, then you can see the workers' compensation. We actually moved this to United Heartland in 2016. Prior to United Heartland, we did have this coverage also with EMC, but United Heartland has proven to be a great move for the district. We've seen lower claim handling costs, a little more aggressive approach to claim handling. We have a claims adjuster who lives just up the road from the ELSC building. And best of all, as David will note, that we have a decreasing experience mod factor. So this year, the district is actually at a 0.56, which means the district gets 44% credit on some workers' compensation premium. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, see, Tom again. 0.55 is a great modification, and I think over the course of time before we moved it over to Heartland, we were above almost 1.2. So the district was in struggling, but then when that moved over, and the risk management, and I think your agency did a little work with it too, and doing some teaching and coaching to clean things up a little bit.
We've done a lot of group safety training. So we've met with transportation, we've met with custodial crews, just making people aware of their environment and better ways that they could do things to help prevent those slips, trips, falls. That's the biggest one. I'd love to get a better handle on the combative exposures and how we can better manage those things, especially now as we're going to get back into in-person learning. Hopefully, fingers crossed for the coming year here. And we've just really seen a rise in those types of exposures in staff.
And let's stop right there, because I see that as a risk. It's not been developed yet, then. Is that what I'm understanding? What you're saying, we just haven't had enough experience with it?
No, the district has their own safety trainings and ways that they can do specific holds and just fighting ways to do that. What I'd like to see is I would love to have a better answer to that question. I just don't know that there's one out there yet.
Yeah.
So the things the district is doing is absolutely correct, and definitely trying the best to make those kiddos more responsive to the actions we're taking. It just seems like those claims are really on the rise, and trying to figure out the why and how we can help improve that.
Well, I want to make sure that I understand what you're talking about. I'm talking about the exposure of the virus this year.
The exposure to violence, is that what you said?
Virus, the
Oh,
virus.
virus. That is still to come. So,
Okay, that's fine. Fair
yeah.
enough.
Yep. So also on this list, you'll see we have cyber coverage with access, some excess crime with travelers, a slew of selective flood policies. Most of that came from FEMA money that the district was awarded, and now we're required to carry flood protection at those buildings. You'll see various limits there because it just depends on how much the district was awarded from FEMA there. Also, there's a handful or just a couple that we carry excess flood on. So one being the ELSC and the other being Taylor Elementary. We have a fine art policy. We have a junior feeder policy, so liability that way. And then the equipment breakdown coverage with SU.
Cassie?
Yeah.
Is there, with the derecho, is there, because I think it's going to be big numbers that are coming from schools, districts that are covered under the program to help recover from the derecho. Is there, going to be maybe additional lines of coverage that they might request us to look at that is different than, because obviously we had hurricane force winds here, like Category 4 hurricane winds here in the Midwest. And I just curious because we have the limits here for flood. That was really a FEMA-oriented piece. And of course, FEMA will probably play into it for us a little bit, but not to the numbers that we had previously through FEMA. Because our insurance is going to take care of the bulk of that. But I was just curious, how this is going to play out in future renewals with regard to the derecho effect. So
that is a great question. So let's jump right into property, okay? Because I knew that was going to be a topic of concern for today, especially with everything happening. So all I can say is, holy cow, what a year. I mean, this has been insane. In the last 4 months, the Cedar Rapids School District has suffered on April 7th from a hailstorm. So we had Harding and Hiawatha elementary schools that were both damaged by that hailstorm that came through. To my knowledge, we're still working on getting the roof for Harding repaired. But that totaled up to nearly $400,000 in claim. On July 22nd, so just before the derecho storm, we had a backup valve that malfunctioned at Jefferson and caused the basement to flood there. So last I talked with John too, that was still being remedied a little bit, and the electrical work was still being reviewed. That is estimated at $100,000 in damage. And then 8/10, the derecho hit. I've been really, really happy with the way EMC has been on top of your claim. So Dave, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I actually drove outside of Cedar Rapids a little ways on 810 just to try to get in touch with somebody at EMC. They had also lost power over there from the storm hitting a little bit earlier, but was able to locate my underwriter who was working from home and just got power back. And I was like, listen, I need someone here ASAP. Our whole town is destroyed pretty much. So I haven't heard from the school specifically on what buildings are damaged. I just need you to get here. And on 8/11, they actually had an adjuster and contractors in town ready to start work. So I was very impressed by that. And I don't know, Dave, if you have any more comments on how that's going so far.
That was, EMC hired for us was Perfection Restoration Company, and they're the second largest one in the country or it could be in the world, a company that came in and they had on-site approaching 500 people on site in their community. Not only were they working with Cedar Rapids schools, they were also working some with Linn-Mar and
We did Marion too.
yeah, Marion as well. But that has gone quite well. They actually are advocating. I think both EMC and Restoration Company really have our best interests in mind. They're pointing things out that says that John and his crew didn't really notice, and saying, this needs to be replaced because do you see this? And they didn't even notice it. And so I think they really have our best interests in mind in identifying things that need to be taken care of. And they are going after very quickly to help expedite the process. We reached out to the AEA, and there's a code section that allows school districts in cases of emergency to request that the AEA approve by sidestepping the open bidding law requirements to make the repairs. And so otherwise it would take us much longer to get things done because we'd have to publicly bid, and that whole process takes a lot of time. And so we were able to get the AEA to sign off on that. So we're able to move forward on the repairs very quickly. But just give you kind of a rough number. We have about square footage of roofs that have been damaged. We have about 700,000 square feet of roofs in the district that have been damaged due to this. And on a typical year, when we do renovations, roof replacements and stuff, in a typical year, we do about roughly 50,000 square feet of roof replacements that we do. So this is a lot of roofs that we have damage to, and thankfully they are tackling our elementaries first. That's why we were able to get in to our elementaries. They're really focused on trying to get those done because they were our least damaged, and those are a group of students that we could get back on site. So they're really working hard to get that done. And John's crew, it's just been amazing how much work they've been able to get done in such a small bit of time. So it's been a godsend that EMC contracted with Restoration for us to get things moving. So
Yeah, really has been. So just to give you an idea, number-wise too, that claim sits at 51.5 million in reserves. Likely that's going to increase significantly as we get into some of these middle schools and high schools with the most damage. Like Dave mentioned, they've really focused on the elementary schools first and trying to get the kiddos back to school where they can. But yeah. And also just to give the storm a little more perspective, our agency has reported close to 5,000 claims, and all of 2019 we had 4,200. So in a matter of a month here, we have over-exceeded what we had turned in a year. So it's just very impactful of our whole community.
And so the next year, excuse me, Kathy, the next year we can expect this discussion to be a little less pleasant then, right?
Yeah, so let's flip to page 11, if you would, Dave. So this is page 11 is the property summary page. So what's good about what's happening right now is we blanket the building and personal property limits. So what that means is, yes, we have to have a set limit for each school, and EMC actually does some pretty awesome replacement cost calculations, and I've actually done a couple on some of the buildings too, just trying to make sure that we're insured to value. Oops, go back one more, I think. Sorry, did I have the wrong page number? Yep, this one right here. So total, we blanket the limit at just over $546 million. But like to put that more in perspective, like Kennedy High School, we insure that at just over $49,600,000. If that building were to be completely destroyed and we needed $50 $50 million to replace that building, we could pull from this blanket limit then. So it just gives the district a little bit of cushion in working with that. And again, we make sure each building itself is insured to value still. Both EMC and our agency go through that each year at renewal, making sure we also take into account some inflation and increasing construction costs too. So while we look at them at an individual level, total, we blanket them all. So to make sure that the district has what it needs that way. And you'll note that we carry a $10,000 property deductible. So this comes per occurrence. So what we've been seeing, and unfortunately for some of my clients, it's happened already. They've had some significant damage from this storm, and what the insurance carriers are leaning to is either one, they want to increase this deductible, or two or three options here. Maybe you leave this deductible alone, but we have a higher deductible now for wind hail. So maybe instead of $10,000, they'll ask us to carry a $100,000 wind hail deductible. Or I've even seen a request to come with a percentage deductible. So you would have a 1, 2, 3% wind hail deductible, meaning that 1% of your building value would now be your deductible on a wind hail. So I haven't heard EMC make any sort of comments or lean towards this yet. However, we did just renew here July 1. So they'll have some time for this claim to kind of settle out and see where they want to go with that. But I would imagine with the increase in property claims they've had, even just over the last 5 years with, Marshalltown being hit with a tornado, they insured the courthouse there. So that was a big loss. There was a tornado also in Parkersburg that they were also impacted by. And now this derecho storm, which also hit Marshalltown again. It hit all of Cedar Rapids, Marion, Linn-Mar, which are all, part of this program, that they'll likely lean to doing something with the deductible option, would be my guess. So things that Dave, Sarah, and I will talk about next year at renewal would be, what does that look like? Is that a good premium savings? Does that mean we buy a deductible buyback policy, which there's carriers out there who will do that? So if they want you to have a $100,000 property deductible now for wind hail, then we can look at options as to how you can buy that deductible back with an insurance policy. So there's just a whole different conversation that will likely need to happen for next year.
I'm
Answer your question?
It answers mine. I want to make sure in the interest of time here is if there's anybody else in the committee or Tom that has comments about what Cassie has said, questions?
Cassie, I just have one question. You and I had a conversation earlier in the summer about, I think you were working with EMC to reduce some of the limits for the commercial auto and things like that. Do you want to talk about that? Because that's kind of interesting and creative method.
Yeah, sure. So actually I had linebacker and auto on my list here, but I know I want to be cognizant of your guys' time too. So auto, I'm going to jump back to my comment of what a year. Great, yeah. So with school being let out in March due to coronavirus, COVID, whatever you want to say here, we actually worked with EMC to help with the fleet and reducing the insurance premium of that. So what we did is we took majority of the vehicles, buses, etc., all down to just comprehensive coverage. So we made sure that there was still coverage for hail, vandalism, those types of things. But while the vehicles were just sitting at the bus lot, not being used, not being driven during this course of time, we didn't want to pay liability coverage. We didn't want to pay collision coverage on those things. So what that turned into is Scott, Suzanne, and I having a lot of conversations daily, weekly, whatever it may be, on what vehicles are we using this week? What vehicles are coming up for summer sports? What buses do you need insured now? And a lot of switching back and forth of, okay, let's add full coverage back. Okay, now, softball is done. Let's get rid of this bus because we're not going to be using it. Take it back just to comprehensive coverage. Initially, when we took down all the fleet or most of the fleet to just comprehensive coverage, it ended up being almost a $77,000 savings to the district. And that was just on the end of last year's term. It caused a little bit of concern as we went into renewal this year, because what it looked like when I presented to the Board of Education was that the auto premium was going down like 18% or something that way. So I had to have EMC quote where auto was expiring versus where we would be should we have full coverage on all of these vehicles, because I wanted full transparency and I didn't want to go into the year thinking that we're really sitting on this 18% decrease, when in all reality it ended up being a 20% increase should we had everything covered the way we did prior. And then the last thing I just really wanted to touch on real quick is that linebacker, as I mentioned before. Let's see, one more page, I think, Dave. So this coverage is actually where we pick up the abuse, molestation, professional liability, harassment, discrimination, civil rights allegations, Department of Education complaints. Those types of claims are picked up under this linebacker policy. So what I wanted to point out to this crew is that this can be a little tricky because this line carries a $25,000 deductible for each claim, but the district isn't charged back this deductible until the claim actually settles. So this could be, you know, depending on the claim, we could settle within a month, we could settle a year out, we could settle 2 years out. So this is where we can incur some costs that I can't really predict. Just depends on claims that occur and when we can get those claims closed out.
Which gets us back to your mock jury trial.
Exactly. Exactly. So a great example of that is I just chatted with Sarah a couple days ago about an invoice she received. And that claim ended up being from 2018 that had finally just settled out. And we had some additional defense costs and a charge then to the district. But that was actually from 2018. So where EMC may say we've incurred $15,000 in claims in a year, the district really could incur $50,000 themselves based on number of claims, how it settles, what's going on. So these ones can get a little tricky. That was super high level and very fast. Do you guys have questions for me?
That was one of the things, if I may give Dave and Sarah and Justin too, kudos here too, is that Scott and I had contacted them at the end of August and suggested maybe due to all the chaos that we could postpone our meeting, and they wanted to go ahead specifically because of your part, Cassie, and what we'd all been through, and appreciate the effort that everybody made in this busy time. It'll be interesting next year. Hopefully this will be the one event we can look back on, but with the way this year is unfolding, I don't know if that's going to be possible or not. But anyway.
I actually made somebody stop saying here what else could happen because I just don't want to know.
No. Well, who would have thought a hurricane, you know?
I know.
The insurance companies should have seen it, but does anybody else have questions here? Okay, hearing none. Tom, thanks for your questions. And we will look forward to hearing from you next year, Cassie.
That sounds great. If any questions arise after, if you want to shoot them to Dave, I'd be more than happy to answer anything that may come up, and I can relay back to the group again.
Thanks. All right, then. Moving along. We are going to 7, correct, Dave?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to discuss about, the reason we did a little changing on the agenda is because 2 of these agenda items kind of fit together. We didn't see it until, well, I noticed it last night as we looked at, reviewed the charter, but first we need to discuss the procedures we use with our auditors looking at the school activity funds. And we'll let Dave take that.
Yeah, and also when we get into it a little bit more, Jordan and Chris from RSM will hopefully kind of weigh in on the agreed upon procedures. I'm kind of going back to why the agreed upon procedures have been instituted for all of you, especially the new ones on the committee. So you have an understanding of what we're doing here. But the agreed upon procedures for Student Activity Fund, the reason why we have those in place is because for a number of years, up till the current year we're in, fiscal year 21, the Student Activity Fund has been operated at the middle schools and high schools directly. They actually process everything. It was a different software that they used, and then and they cut their own checks and did all the purchasing and deposits from their buildings themselves. And so the only things that were accounted for at the district level were all other funds other than Student Activity Fund. On a monthly basis, reports would be given to the board that we would compile from the different schools. They would send us information, and we would compile the report and send those reports to the board. And at the end of the year, a journal entry would be posted into our current activity, our current district finance software that we use, and then that information would then be uploaded to the state for our annual reports to the state. And so because our internal controls that we have in place and processes that we have in place at the district level to cover our things running through the district, our regular finance system, those policies and procedures had to be manually done differently at each individual school, and we wanted to be sure those procedures were being followed, because we had no way to track that from the district level office. And so that's why we ended up doing a agreed upon procedures, and that was done twice a year. Once in the spring that covered a period of time once in the fall that covered a period of time in the fall, and once in the spring. And
Can I interrupt just for the sake of our new members?
Yeah.
When we talk about the activity fund, a lot of money moves through these accounts. And I mean, if you want to have an idea later, you can go back and look at the agendas for the Board of Education. You will see the monthly reports, or the reports that Dave provides to the board, to see that a lot of money moves through these accounts. So that was one of the reasons for the procedure too, was just the amount of money that was going through there. I'm sorry, go ahead. I thought I should clarify that.
Yeah. And on an annual basis, from memory, I think it's about $1.3 million or so runs through the Student Activity Fund for all of our high schools and middle schools. And so that's why we had the agreed upon procedures to be done twice a year, so that they can look at our internal controls and our processes that we have in place, that they are indeed following them at the building level. So now we move to FY21. FY21, last year, we actually were starting to implement new software called Infinite Visions. And in that process, we were going to roll in the Student Activity Fund within that new software. And so, unfortunately, COVID hit, and then we had to kind of table the implementation of that new software. But we had already started down the road of closing bank accounts and doing some of that, getting stuff ready to open up bank accounts, getting things ready. So we wanted to continue on that process. So we worked with Grant Wood, who was our current finance provider, software provider. We worked with them to roll in Student Activity Fund into a Grant Wood for 1 year until we get the new software set up. And so that means all the processes and procedures that we have in place for all our general fund, our management fund, our PEPL and SAVE funds, and all of that, all those processes will be followed for the Student Activity Fund as well. And we will cut all the checks. The schools will are no longer cutting checks. They are all no longer doing that stuff. So now we actually have one bank account, and all those funds funnel to that one bank account now. And so the discussion is whether or not we think we need to do some student activity fund agreed upon procedures moving forward, or if we do, does it need to look a lot differently? And that's the kind of discussion. Jordan, you have anything to share? Did I do a kind of good synopsis of why that's in place and the purpose of it?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's just always been, it's something that the district didn't have the transparency to monitor themselves, and they didn't have the staff to devote the time to go in and monitor it outside of their accounting software. And I think talking with Dave here, now that they're going to have that transparency and the ability to review it directly themselves, it won't take the same level of burden to actually be going out to these schools and gathering all this information to kind of have RSM do it in the past, is what I believe Dave's thoughts are.
Yeah, and the other good point is, back in the day, before RSM got involved with this, the district did have an internal auditor, and that was part of the.
Yes.
And that was part of the internal auditor's responsibility. They went out and did a lot of that as well. And
Dave and Jordan too. Joy, I apologize for not introducing you.
No worries.
I mean, I've always been pleased with RSM, the performance they do for us. But we still don't have an auditor. That's the thing that concerns me, Dave. Just if I had my 2 cents to put in there. If you're saying to me, if I understand this correctly, we wouldn't use RSM to go out and look at the activities, correct?
yeah, we have more oversight. We have as much oversight of the student activity fund as we do with all the other funds, because of it's being now rolled into our current accounting software. And so the discussion is, do we think we need to do some additional testing at the school levels, with RSM, and what that we might have to look at what those testings, what we were asking them to do. I mean, they may be looking at different things if we feel like there's a good purpose behind that. And Sherry, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you covered it very well, Dave. Just that there's been a major change on how student activity funds are run now.
Sherry, would you please introduce yourself to the group, especially to our new members, so they'll know the important role you play here?
I certainly will, Maureen, thank you. I'm Sherry Lefsky. I'm the accounting manager here at the district. I've been with the district for 10 years.
What would be the savings, Dave, if we decided to proceed forward without this services?
I'd have to go look. I don't remember what the amounts are. Do you know, Jordan?
Yeah, Dave, this is Chris.
Oh, Chris?
Yeah, it's about $3,900 a semester for each ADP that we do.
Okay.
Could you repeat that, please?
It's about 7,800 a year.
800 for the year, correct?
Yeah.
For both the fall and the spring, right?
Correct.
This is Janet, and I have a quick question on just being new. So we're still getting requests from the school for the district to pay. Is that correct? So, like, if there's out of the activity fund, there's still some sort of communication coming from the school to pay an invoice.
Yes. Now everything runs through our system before they actually cut their own checks. And now a request goes through our system, which is called BSO. It's our purchasing system. All requests funnel through that and go through the approval process like everything else that we have. And then it gets paid from that point in time. Previously, they would just cut the check at the building level. And now all those processes gets entered by the secretary, the bookkeeper, gets approved by the principal. Then it gets, if it's a certain dollar amount, then it will go to myself at a certain threshold, and then it will go, on if it, and then if it needs to be board approved, and at certain thresholds, things get to be board approved, additional ones. So those processes are now in place. It was much harder to do when they were segregated from our system.
Okay, I mean, so what type of support do they submit with the request?
They support, they have the invoices or their quotes. They need quotes. They have all of that attached like we would require of everybody else to do with
Okay.
all of them. So
I guess in my opinion, and knowing that, I would say that you still want to do some sort of audit procedure around what's coming from the school, but your sample size would probably be smaller.
Gordon, you can jump in here, though. If we do not have the student activity fund agreed upon procedures, it is part of the auditing process to cover student activity funds. So a little more auditing would be done at the end of the year when they cover student activity funds.
Yep, yeah, so we would still audit the student activity funds. We would include, from a cash disbursement side, we would just include it with the rest of the testing, being that, it's just running through the same process, and we do a test of controls over that process. We would still, analytically review kind of the balances of each student activity fund. I know we were kind of doing it, for each, once in the fall and once in the spring, but we also do that at the end of the year, so we would do that as well. So that would, that'll be looked at. The true cash receipt portion, I mean, I don't know how many, I know we've talked kind of extensively on the expense side. Has there been necessarily major changes on the cash receiving side as well? I know they go to one bank account now. Is that still being reported through the district as well?
That's being reported through the district, and it comes now through our same system that we use, our book fees. Our online is the Infinite Campus, which is a new program a few years ago.
Yep, so that's also running straight through where that, previously hadn't been going through the district as well. They were just kind of being maintained by the local bookkeepers.
So is there any concern, Jordan and David, with, it seemed like a lot of our issues earlier were we received cash and it sat in somebody's desk for a while, or we weren't quite sure if we got all the cash. Has some of that been alleviated, or is that something that we want to test going forward?
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Sherry and Dave, but I believe that risk would still exist. I mean, the risk that something doesn't get reported to the district is always going to be a risk at any time there's a cash collection. And like I said, it was before, and it was, the risk that somebody had receipted it and, not turned it in timely. There's also the risk necessarily that someone just receives it and doesn't submit anything, right? But that's something that, the procedure can test the timeliness of it, but there's nothing we could do really as auditors or the districts themselves if, someone just flat out turn something in. But we could, the lag issue, I think, could still technically exist even in the new system if someone's not reporting what they're receiving timely.
I concur with Jordan on that. That's about the only thing that really is, is a potentially a problem is the lag time, of making sure that that happens. And because because that money is still getting turned into the offices, the bookkeepers at the school, and then that money then flows through back to us at the central office. And so that is a potential. That is correct, Scott. You were, the purchasing side of things are all probably are going to be taken care of through our current controls, but it is the collection of the revenue is still happening at the buildings. It's not all being collected directly here. So that is.
Yep. And Dave and Sherry, is that lag going to be being reported to you guys when you guys do collect it? Is there like a receipt date of the transaction? Like, will you guys know that in the system, or will it just show to you guys when it's actually submitted to you?
Probably pretty much when it's submitted to us.
Okay.
we can, next year with our Infinite Vision software, all of the backup, the receipting will accompany it. So we would be able to tell if receipts were written for the money and then when it was actually receipted into the district.
Okay.
All of that we would be able to monitor.
So,
We monitor that as well right now with our other funds.
so Jordan and Dave and Sherry, I don't know that it feels like we need to do a 1 or 2 separate agreed upon procedures just for that risk, especially if it's only maybe a 1-year risk. Jordan, what would you think about, I'm going to talk audit, but calling that an unpredictable procedure this year and maybe doing a little bit of testing around that, just as part of the audit process? Then maybe,
Yeah, I mean, we can look at that. Like I said, I mean, as far as from a true financial statement audit risk, I mean, whether the time, won't ever be something that will really result in any written comments from a financial statement audit perspective, but we could incorporate some into there. But like I said, from a risk, as long as at the end of the day, by our opinion date, it's right, we probably won't get too worked up about it, but we can take a look.
I mean, Jordan, I think you're kind of talking me into that this, for that limited risk, we're never going to be able to make sure that every dollar that somebody is handed is turned in. I'm kind of really getting to the point where I don't know that we need to do any sort of special procedures around this as things are getting incorporated into the school system.
Yeah, I mean, and two, I know you guys had mentioned kind of the cost wise. As far as the timing for us to do the work, I mean, that is probably the more timely piece of the whole AUP too, is that. So it's not like if we're going to, drop off 7 steps, we're going to be able to cut the price,
Just go into the building.
the price is going to be 7 cents. I mean, that's the bulk of our time and spent because we have to go to all the different locations and talk to, the actual individuals receiving the cash. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what that number would be, but it wouldn't be a huge cut either, probably.
One improvement I see now is now that we're all in the same software, you have your principals and your associates and others that may be in charge of student activity funds. Now they're able to get into the one software and look up balances and research anything that was receipted or payments. In the past, it was a separate software. I don't believe they even had access. There weren't logins for all of the administrators. They could always, and they always did get reporting from their bookkeeper and secretary. But we all know how much easier it is if we can go in ourselves and look and review.
Well, I think from what I'm hearing, I mean, because we're not in Infinite Visions yet, we're still in implementation. So it does sound like, there is, you will have a little bit more control when we get in a new system than we do today with the student activity fund with Grant Wood. So maybe we ought to just look at doing the activity fund agreed upon procedure just on the receiving side of things for this one last year, and then have RSM come back to us, propose what that cost would be, and then we can kind of evaluate at our next meeting. Actually, our next meeting isn't really till November, which is probably a little bit late.
Yeah, that's actually when we kind of do it.
Yeah.
Unless you go for a spring agreed upon procedures, because I will be very honest, with COVID and now with deratio, we have schools, there will be reasonable delays.
Yep. That's true.
Maybe we look at doing it once just in the spring and we just look on the return side, and maybe that really limits the amount of work that we're doing. But we're still kind of covering our risk. We're still covering it the best we can.
And from an audit perspective, we'll still inquire with all of those people at the school if they're, concerned with any fraud or have concerns with fraud, kind of the stuff we do for the AUP. Well, obviously, if anything, most likely when we're looking at this first time, we will bring that up to the audit committee throughout the process. We're also inquiring with those individuals that are part of that process if they're holding on to any tax everything as of year end and haven't been completed.
So, Dave, I don't see that we don't need a motion or anything.
No, we'll actually take this back, because we won't do a agreed upon procedure in the fall, but we will actually bring that agreement in the spring. I don't know what time that we do it in the spring, and we'll just approve that, and we'll actually look at the agreement well enough in advance how that's going to look, and then we'll bring it to the committee to approve, and then once the committee approves it, we'll actually have the Board of Education approve it as well. So.
I mean, I don't want to, perfect this, but is the rest of the committee comfortable with this also? I am now, having discussed it. Anybody opposed to the idea of proceeding this way? Okay, informal vote. I like that. Shall we move ahead, Dave?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Brett.
So now we're going to go back to number 3 on our agenda.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about the charter. And so for the new members, here we actually always included our charter and our charter matrix in the attached to every packet of monthly audit committee agendas. And so, but the charter is what governs what we do, okay? And so you can kind of read through. I'm not sure if you guys, any of you have read it at all, but I do have one proposed change, okay? And we've always had in the past, a board member that served on the committee. There has been a kind of a change in heart. Not every, because audit committee is one of the committees that it's a board appointed committee. It is a board committee. And with a board committee, that raises the level of what you need to do. On a board appointed committee, it is an open meeting. This is why we're actually recording this meeting, having this done this way, because it is a board appointed committee. And you have agendas, you have to have minutes, it's open to the public. And so, but not every board appointed committee actually has board members on the committee. And so there was a talk about not striking to have a board on the committee. And so I do think every board might have a different viewpoint. That might be what the board feels today, might be, say, we don't need a person on the committee today. But another board, say 5 years from now, would say, yes, we would like to appoint a board member to the committee. So it's, I'm proposing that we still leave this. This is audit committee is organized as a permanent citizens committee comprised of board members and non-board members. And we might, that's the one I wasn't sure about crossing or not crossing out, but, and the committee should be comprised of no more than 10 members. Audit committee members shall be comprised of the following: striking the one on board education liaison, striking that, and then adding, and I just see there's a misspelling here, at the board's discretion, the board at its discretion may appoint a member of the board to the audit committee as a liaison. So that is something that is still in our charter. They can choose year in, year out whether they want to appoint somebody, but it's at the board's discretion to be able to appoint a member to the committee. And I think that handles both scenarios. One board may want to, another board may not. And so that way it covers us both ways.
Hey, Dave, this is Tom.
Yep.
Can I take off my insurance hat and put on my history hat for a minute?
Okay.
In the past, the board member was not a voting member of our committee. They were a resource and maybe shared some insider history on that. And some years the board members were very good. The board member was very good about attending meetings. and other years, they were only so-so. So just information.
And the other thing, if I may add too, is that last year when we started discussing this, Dave also attends the board meetings, right? So we felt some justification saying, within your role with the board, you also attend this meeting. So
Yep.
we were covered a little bit there too, right?
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
And so that was the one change to the charter. And but also, I mean, when you go down through here, and I think for the new members, this page 2 of the charter, I think this is very important to note the role of the audit committee. And this paragraph here, these 2 paragraphs. So the audit committee will provide the Cedar Rapids Community School District with practical means for the Board of Education to provide independent review and oversight of the district's financial reporting processes, internal controls, and the independent auditors and the district's process for monitoring compliance with laws and regulation. Audit committee will also provide a forum separate from the management in which auditors and other interested parties can candidly discuss concerns. And then it says audit committee will help ensure the district's management properly develops and adheres to a sound system of internal controls and procedures are in place to objectively assess district's management practices, and independent auditors through their own review objectively assess the district financial reporting progress. So that is really what our committee is all about, is providing that guidance. And so, and right here, we can see that we have a liaison. In actuality, I still think we want to keep that there, because if the board chooses, it will be in a liaison capacity. They will not be a voting member, they'll still be a liaison capacity. So I think we need to make this change to the charter. And I don't think, but the charter matrix does not have that detail of that part of the information in charter matrix. It's just the charter that I think we would need to change.
And Dave, we can change it, but the board approves it, right?
Correct. We have to, once it gets approved by the committee here, then we'll have to take it to the board to have the board approve these
So
changes.
if the board still wants to continue, they'll just send it back. Correct. Okay.
Correct. And also, the reason why we changed the order of the agenda is because of this right here. Because it actually says, right here, the audit committee shall review and discuss results of independent auditors' special activity funds audit with the management and the independent auditors. That's the reason why we wanted to have this the previous conversation to see if we weren't going to do it, we would scratch this from the charter. So since it's a part of the charter, I think we'll do that. And I don't think we need to make any changes now, because we're going to still do it in the spring. It doesn't say twice a year. It just says, we'll discuss. So I think we're good on that.
Do you want a motion on the one right now and the correction now?
Yes, I would love that. If everybody's fine with that correction, or if they have a different verbiage they would like to see, I'm open for any suggestions.
Would anybody like to offer a motion?
Motion to accept the changes to the charter.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right then. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
We will probably revisit the charter in the spring again, so. Okay, now we're going to go, and we're going to have to move along, and I apologize, it often comes when we get busy. Whitney, would you like to give us an so brief
Yes.
about your report to the board way back in the normal times of, halfway normal times of July?
Read Rachel, I guess.
And Tom is there also. Thank you, Tom, for going there.
The board met virtually, so via Zoom, I believe it was, and Gary presented the report for the group, and it went, I don't think there were any questions from the board, but it was
smooth sailing, and I think pretty much what we expected to hear. So,
And you did a fine job. I watched, and if for new members, you can watch board meetings that are on YouTube, which are really interesting, and you can get all the big fat agendas that proceed. It's a lot of transparency, and it's a good education. But you guys did a fine job.
And for the new members, these were actually the presentation that went before the board followed our highlights of the year. And that's what the PowerPoint and all that. I didn't put the PowerPoint in the packet. These were the items that were pretty much covered. So on the presentation to the board. So.
Thank you, Whitney. And as what Dave said to new members too is, I'm sorry if I'm using up all the time for this, but you will notice the charters in the packet each time, the grids in the packet each time, and Dave will also include things that we've done. When this is my 6th year on the committee, and I used to think, why are we having this charter in here each time? And then about 3 years into it, it hit me, oh, there it is, there's the guideline to what we do. It took me a while. I'm sure you're faster learner than me, but that's why all these things are here. And the other thing I'll tell you is you're not going to learn everything in a year. But anyway, moving along on our agenda, I think we're at 6. Dave, do you want to go with 6 with the conflict of interest?
Yes. Some of you members that were on the committee last year, you will recall this last year, we actually had a conflict of interest disclosure form. This is something that we need to complete on an annual basis. So if each of you would print off a copy of this and sign it and send it to me electronically, that'd be great. And then that way I can forward that on to Laurel Day, the school board secretary, and she keeps these on file as well for to make sure that all of our committees don't have a conflict of interest. So,
okay. So please scan those in and email to Dave, or you want them to go to Sarah?
Either or. So.
Okay. Excellent. Good. And as long as you're on the floor, Dave, do you want to proceed then with 8? No, wait a minute.
Yes, I can say 8. There's we actually there was
I don't like where you're going here. I don't like when you're moving into 8, Dave.
Well, it was not truly a complaint, but there was, that's why I said there was no complaints, because it wasn't really a qualified complaint. And with this, there was somebody was concerned about they're filing unemployment, and they use this system to file a complaint about filing unemployment, and they felt like we needed to and it was on the normal process for unemployment and how that gets resolved, and they were thinking that we should not contest. We should just approve unemployment just like normal, just approve it because of the CARES Act time frame that we were in. And there was somebody that would continue to get paid the whole time. This wasn't a fraud reporting. There wasn't any inappropriate action here. They were just concerned about why we would contest unemployment. And with that fact, we were actually paying everybody. So there was really no unemployment there. And they wanted us to say, yay, we'll prove that. And they were complaining about that. This wasn't the avenue. This wasn't a fraudulent thing. This wasn't anything like that. So that's why I said there really wasn't one, but I just wanted to say somebody used the system,
good,
to report something that wasn't really.
And again, for the new members, the board has established a contact line, which is a separate service where people can call in fraud and abuse, and that's the line they use. Correct? That's what you're saying, Dave.
You're right.
Okay.
Right.
Excellent.
So, Maureen,
on the floor.
Maureen.
Yes.
Just a quick follow-up to that is when we first initiated this service, there was a discussion at the board level about expanding it to go beyond just the financial piece to also the human resource piece, but the board chose not to go that route. And so that's just a little background.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
All right, then. I was unaware of that. Okay. Dave, do you want to proceed then?
Yeah. So we go down into other items here. We have the Moody's report. We always share with the committee our Moody's report that we get from a rating agency. This is the only one we get right now, is from Moody's, and this is was actually just completed and submitted August 25th. So it was a little bit later than normal, but I wanted to get this to you. And they are still keeping our rating at a AA3 rating, and so that is pretty much, in my opinion, probably the highest that we could probably stand to get at this point in time. So, and they point out that our, you can get some of our demographic information, the population, income is in this. We also have our cash balances exceeds the U.S. median right now. And also the fund balance as a percentage of operating revenue is on par with the U.S. median. I think that's probably one of the main points to kind of look at. So we have, obviously this is prior to the ratio and stuff. And when they're looking at our finances from FY19. FY20, they have not reviewed that information. So this is based on FY19 data, and this was prior to COVID. That was prior to all of that. So this is kind of the data here.
Nice job, Dave.
Yeah. So I just want to, always want to give this to the group, and so that you guys have this data. So.
Okay. And I'm assuming everybody received the local revenue report that Dave sent out this morning, which is right here.
Yep.
Okay.
So also for the new members too, the local revenues report. Okay. This report was created after and Sherry, jump in if I misspeak here, after the embezzlement that happened. And Sherry, what year was that embezzlement?
That was in 2008.
2008. And I think that was almost approaching 600,000. It was 500 some thousand dollars, I believe it was.
587,000.
Okay. Yeah. And and where that money was taken, it was really in the local revenue portions of our district finances. And so this is another thing that's been put in place since then to try to take a look at one year's local revenues compared to another year and see if there's any differences that jump out we can explain. If something's funky going on here. And so what you'll see when we're looking at current year to prior year, there are some big differences here. Starting to. You're going to see much larger differences because I'm going to call it the COVID effect. You'll see a lot of these lines now have COVID because transportation, we did not have, we stopped doing paid transportation, because of COVID in March. So we had a lot that we did not bill for. And so when you compare one year to the next year, the revenues are way down. Investments, where we thought this year to last year. Well, guess what? Markets did tank, and they did at the end of the year. We were doing okay, but then markets tanked. So, even though our revenues, our interest revenues were not great anyway to begin with, but in comparison to last year, they went down. And so you can see a lot of these are the impact to COVID, the differences here. We're always looking at trying to identify the bigger differences, not the smaller differences that we have, like 8% here. We're really looking at the bigger ones. What happened with the prior refund? This is one that was ongoing. The members on the committee have always seen this. It was how we had a flex benefit. We had a refund of money from our flex benefit funds. That's where our flex benefit accounts, money was sitting there for a long time. Over time, it builds up. We got that refunded back this year. We pulled it in. We actually, our miscellaneous income here, a big driver for why the increases are up, revenue is up. We had our big program expanded. We added a new location, but within that location, we actually had to do a lot of renovations as well. And you'll see that is down here, the renovations. But we added a couple other schools to our big partners within big. So that added more revenue coming in. And so management fund, we have obviously our interest revenue is down. We had our dividend was down, compared to previous, and we actually had less, and we had more in insurance settlement funds that we have received this year than last year. And when we go into this next year, it's going to be a lot larger, a number when we compare, because we had our money that we're getting from reimbursed for the Jefferson water damage from the flood from the RPZ valve flooding the basement and stuff. That will flow through here.
Okay.
And save, the big one is we have the E-rate payment and also the new site renovations, part of the lease. That flows through here, and there were some renovations to the new location. That's why our money is up this year compared to last year. And couple energy rebates were higher and last year than it was this year. So that was the main reason why our PEPL miscellaneous income is down. And for our daycares and nutrition fund, the revenue is down because we weren't bringing in as much revenue due to closure of school due to the COVID for both the daycares and the nutrition fund. That is the quick overview of local revenues.
And again, to you new members, it'll be a lot more clear after Dave presents his orientation next month. Or in a couple of years, it'll be clear what all these different accounts mean. All right then. Dave, do you want to do the COVID update?
Yes. Well, real quick, the orientation, I'm just going to say the orientation, everybody's invited, the whole committee is invited. We encourage all new members to be there for the orientation. All members are invited to be there. And it will probably look a little bit differently this time than last time. We're going to change up a little bit. We're going to, try to use our website a little bit more and have data out there, and we're going to encourage people to look at our website and go through the data and how school finance works, and we're going to kind of approach it that way. And we'll see how this works. This is we're thinking outside the box. We're doing things a little bit differently, and and the audit committee will be our first group that we go through that process with.
Oh, so when you say so people could see it, you mean the general public?
Correct. School finance and school, all of that information will be out there in a different format than it has been in the past. So,
excellent.
Yep. COVID-19, we don't have a whole lot of time here. We are still in the process of looking at COVID. We will be carrying over a fair amount of our COVID finances into next year. We actually initially thought we were going to need a big chunk of money to support our nutrition fund from our CARES Act money. But in fact, the summer feeding program and the process that we had, actually, the nutrition fund did not need as much money as they thought. So we were able to move some of that money back. But we also have other needs as well as we're working through. But I'm just saying that I don't have the finances up and ready for you guys to see that, but because some of these changes just happened, and we're actually still looking at where we might be able to shift some other dollars from expenditures that we didn't save. We might be able to shift that to the CARES, but we're still working through some of that right now. But I did want to talk about our derecho. Yes, we did talk a little bit about that before, and I just want to reiterate. We sustained a substantial amount of damage, and you could see Cassie basically said earlier we have $51 million in reserves that they set aside for that. and not to be shocked if that number goes up as we get into recovering from this. But like I said, there was 700,000 square feet of roofs that we're going to be replacing due to this derecho. And so not to mention Kennedy is probably our worst hit facility that was throughout the building. I'm sure some of you have seen on Facebook and different things, pictures of the damage, the substantial. The renovation company has been out working diligently, helping clear up our sites and getting everything ready for school on the buildings that we can have school. And they've been a great asset to the district and helping us recover. Without them, we wouldn't be close to recovering at this point in time. We were trying to do this without the support of the restoration company and getting us to this point where we're at today. So.
Excellent. Excellent. All right then. I wanted to mention briefly too, mindful, we're running late and I apologize. We do try to keep on schedule. My fault this time, but we have always asked members to submit, it's at the back of your packet. If you have comments about the meeting, improvements, and Dave's got it up on the screen now. We usually do it when we're meeting in person. It's kind of, an anonymous thing, but feel free to let's send it to Sarah and she can distribute them then, because we really appreciate feedback and we've gotten some really good suggestions from this too. The other thing for new members is when we do meet at the district, we also have a time for executive session. However, we're not doing it these times when we're doing virtual meetings, so that will change for you too. Hopefully we'll be out there soon, Dave, but I don't know when. It's not up to us. The district will let us know, right, when we can meet there.
Right.
Okay. Good.
I do want to point out one thing about we will be getting Zoom invites out to everybody, for the upcoming meetings. That will actually come from our Tony White. She will be, I'm going to get her to list everybody contact information, but I'm holding off because I'm hoping that I wanted to find out from Drew what his new email, Drew Yoder, he's one of the members who's not here today. He actually is, so the rest of the group knows, he actually just took a new job. And the reason why he's not here today is because this is first week on the new job.
Oh.
And that's why he's not here today. But once I get his contact information for his new job, because I want to make sure we get it to the right calendar, and so that those invites will be going out to everybody. It'll populate on your calendar then. But the final meeting, or June 9th meeting, we got a lot of time to deal with this, but our location that we typically meet in the room that we typically meet, Cedar A, is not available that day. We got bumped by some other professional development training that's happening on here. So we can do one of two things. We can see if there's any other rooms available, and we can change another date from the 9th to a different date. We can possibly, if anybody at their locations would want to say, hey, we want to go off-site somewhere and meet at somebody else's, maybe one of your guys' facilities that you guys work at, maybe we want to meet at an off-site location, we could do that. We just have time to kind of look at our options, but I want to give you a heads up. We will not be able to use Cedar A at this point in time because there's some professional developments happening, and we may not even have another room available on that day because it's such a big thing going on here at the district. So
we can discuss that later into our year, right?
Correct. Yep.
Good. All right then. I think that it's time to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Who said that? I'm sorry.
Scott.
Scott. Thanks, Scott.
You're welcome.
Do we have a second?
Second, John.
Excellent.
Second by John.
Good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right. All opposed? Thank you so much for your patience. We'll see you at our orientation meeting next month. New and old members alike. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody.